And I was like, you're asking the wrong stuff. Like, if you've never sold before, if you don't have any experience in business, and I'd been in my recruiting industry for 5 years. I'd been in business development. I'd managed a successful recruitment firm. And for somebody who had no experience, which often happens with people who even join Express or other franchises, he had no business experience, had never been in sales before. And I was like, if you go ahead with this, it's fine, follow the systems. But again, you're not going to just open the door. The business isn't going to come to you.
Welcome to Clicks and Bricks Podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset.
If you get one shot at this, what kind of shot are you going to take?
If we forget who we are, they're going to forget who you are.
You've got an adversity story that's out of this world.
Everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer.
Today we're talking with Brent from Express Employment Professionals. How are you doing today, Brent?
Yeah, I'm great, thanks.
Sorry about my little mix up there. I've been having a rough day today. You've got a pretty exciting system going on up there, and you're out of Vancouver. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah, Vancouver, BC.
Fantastic. And you are part of Express Employment Professionals. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what Express Professionals does?
Yeah, absolutely. So I own the Vancouver Express Employment Professionals office. We're a franchise. The company is just under 40 years old, founded by two founders based out of Oklahoma in the US. The company is just near a $4 billion company, 850 locations in North America, and places about 500,000 people a year in jobs.
That's a lot. That's pretty big. How long ago did you say that they opened?
I think they're about 38 years old, just shy of 40
Okay.
years, maybe 39 this year.
So they've been around for a while, and you've been in the franchise. You've had your franchise for how long?
We are about 5.5 years. It'll be 6 years May of this year.
Fantastic. And then in our pre-interview, you said that you were at the break-even point somewhere between 3 or 6 and 8 months. Is that correct?
Yeah, so about January is when we signed the dotted line and prepped ourselves to open our door. When we opened our door, yeah, I think somewhere between 6 to 8 months is where we hit that first month where we were break even and even showing a bit of like monthly profit. Of course, we had significant investments that we put in ahead of time and in opening the business and all that stuff that we needed to recoup. But it happened really quick through following a lot of the pre-open and post-open systems and processes that the franchise had kind of laid out to say this is the pathway to success.
Right. So at that 6 to 8 months, you had operational, you were in profit. Does that include all of your investment back, or that you're still paying the loans at that point?
Oh yeah, it just meant that was within 6 months of us being in operation, our monthly revenue had passed our current monthly expenses.
That's
so we
fantastic.
kind of broke even. Yeah, broke even from an expense perspective, including all of our overhead, but yes, still had our original investment that we had put into the company that we needed to recoup over time.
Now, obviously, Express has 800 and something locations nationwide. You don't know all of those different franchise owners. When you bought the franchise, did they kind of give you an expectation of how long until you were operationally cash flow positive, or is that typical for an Express owner, or are you an anomaly there?
That's a good question. I mean, I think there's some caution that the franchise has to take to be able to describe how long it can or can't take.
Right.
I think just going into it, knowing what the potential revenue numbers would be from the business that we perceived we could do and following the system. But I think a lot of it was just after doing our research and due diligence to go ahead was I guess, a lot of faith in that the numbers that they were giving us, the potential was going to be real. And sure enough, within that 6 to 8 month mark, we achieved those goals. But it was definitely, it wasn't, I think a lot of people think you open the doors to your business and the phone's going to ring and all of a sudden you're going to do all this business. And Express was very open with the fact that it was very much about make the phone rings, go out there and ring other people and hunt for the business and generate the business yourself. And so it was very hands-on and very much a huge accomplishment for us to get to that point because there was a lot of hard work that went into it for our team to get there.
Absolutely. Any business is hard work. Doesn't matter if it's a franchise or not. Franchise takes a lot of that heavy lifting out of the way for you. So, but I think it's important for the audience to keep in mind, if you're looking at buying a franchise, the franchisor is selling you a product just like any other product. So they're going to give you a lot of best case scenarios. They do have to follow some laws though. So you said something fantastic there. And I think a lot of people that are buying franchises kind of trust the lawyer and trust the franchisor before they buy, and they just kind of take it at face value for what it was. You said you did your own due diligence before you bought into this franchise. What are some of the key things that you were looking at before you decided to make the investment into this specific franchise?
Yeah, a couple things. I mean, I'm fortunate where my business partner is a franchisor himself, a local franchise here in Vancouver that he set up. So I had a really strong partner who understood franchising and understood the business systems that they were going to provide to us. But at the end of the day, again, the expectation from Express and from us was that we had to go out. We had to do door pulls. We had to go and knock on businesses. We had to make phone calls. We needed to generate the business. The expectation was to do 100 door pulls every single week. So, I mean, it's a huge amount, 20 a day. And I do recall a situation after being open for a few years where anybody who was interested in buying a new franchise would occasionally reach out. I had a guy who was asking me about the supports and all these different things that the company would give, and they give great support, but I really felt he was asking the wrong questions. And I used an analogy for him of like trying to learn how to ride a bike, and they were going to provide the bike, but he was asking how warm the hand on his back was going to be. And I was like, you know, you're asking the wrong stuff. Like, if you've never sold before, if you don't have any experience in business, and I'd been in my recruiting industry for 5 years. I'd been in business development. I'd managed a successful recruitment firm. And for somebody who had no experience, which often happens with people who even join Express or other franchises, he had no business experience, had never been in sales before. And I was like, you know, if you go ahead with this, it's fine, follow the systems. But again, you're not going to just open the door. The business isn't going to come to you unless you're really lucky, or maybe you've got this amazing market. I mean, even right now, we're in this massive, you know, challenge from a workforce perspective where there's this great recession or great resign. You know, we haven't felt it a ton here, but I mean, it's definitely hard to find like great people in our market. Vancouver's one of the most expensive places to live in the world. So again, it's not the type of place where you can just open your doors and all of a sudden you're going to have all this business. We had to go and get it. And Express, I think, was really open, kind of saying that's the way you need to approach it.
Right. I think if you're buying a franchise, you're obviously buying the branding. You're buying some nationwide marketing, or maybe a lot of nationwide marketing, but all the local marketing and sales is up to the franchisee, right? The person that owns that franchise. And I think that's the case across the board with almost all franchises, right? There's the sales and the local marketing have to be in your hand. And that's what's going to bring you to the next level versus anybody else. It's really, really important. I think a lot of franchise people looking to buy a franchise think, oh, I'll just kick my building up and people will come, right? Maybe that's true of like a Cold Stone where it's ice cream and you got foot traffic.
I was just going to say, I think especially as a service provider, like whether it's, you know, like home services or if it was emergency restoration, whatever it may be. I mean,
right.
Again, like we do get phone calls from people who have just found us through Google. But again, yeah, it's different than if you were a Subway and you put the sign up and open the door, you know, then yeah, people might just show up. But yeah, a little different here where we're in a corporate office downtown and you know, people aren't just walking in our doors saying, I need to hire people. We're going out to businesses saying, hey, we've got a system, we've got a process, it's proven. We can help you hire. Hiring's hard. We can help you do it better than you're doing it right now. We can help you access that top talent in the market. And again, fortunately for me, it was bringing over 5 years of experience from the industry. And then I've been in sales and specifically business management and hiring for, almost 20 years. So, you know, I felt that I understood the challenges that our clients are really going through. And then especially being in the industry that we're in of hiring, I mean, I had to hire for my business and we went through turnover and I had to go through those same challenges and really got like a catalytic kind of view and approach to the challenges that businesses go through and learned a ton more through, you know, opening my own business as the franchise to really understand the problems that our clients go through with or without us. So a ton of value that I got early on that I was able to then help share with the businesses that we work with. Right.
And early in 2022, we're having a lot of hiring issues and across the globe, right? It's an employee's market now. It's not an employer's market anymore. And that's been the first time in my life, at least that I can recall, to where the employee had the upper hand when he's going to an interview. But before we jump into those details, almost 6 years ago, you made the decision to no longer be an employee, to be your own franchise of a company. So now you're the boss. You don't have a time clock to punch anymore. You don't have the benefits of, the comfort of, we have insurance and we've got a 401k and all that benefit that people enjoy so much of why you would work for somebody else. Can you tell us a little bit about the mindset on that shift and some of the adversities that you had to go through, and maybe some tips and tricks on how you got over them when you were making that transition.
Yeah, and actually, sorry, could you clarify the question a bit more?
So when you were leaving your day job, right? You had you're working for somebody else. You've got all these comforts of, you've got insurance, you've got vacation time, you've got some sick pay, you've got, all those benefits of why you work for somebody else, but you're not going to have that anymore.
Right. Okay.
You are now 100% dependent on yourself, right? What was the mindset? Did you have to make a mindset shift for that? Or was that something you were chomping at the bit to be? Or was it something that you really had to, pump yourself up to make that run, right? This is like you're getting ready to start the biggest game of your life, basically.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think I've been fortunate where, my father's worked for the same company for almost his entire life. He's getting close to I think he's just turned 60 or 65. And he's worked for the same company for 30, 40 years. And I remember when I was really young, he had an opportunity to start a company with two of his friends who were from the industry, who he decided not to because he had a young family. And between him and my mom, it's not like they had all this security and had all this money where they could afford to take the risk. And I don't think he regrets the decision not doing it. I think for him, maybe it was the right decision at the time. But those two friends are beyond wealthy. The company they started was a huge success. And I know deep down, like maybe there's some regret that he didn't do that, but I don't think it's necessarily a decision, and more just that you see the success they had. I was in a position where, the family that I had with my wife, she had kids from a previous marriage. So, my risk more than anything, I think, was I felt like if I didn't do it, I would be assigning myself to the fact I'd be an employee for the rest of my life. And I think the success I've had in all my jobs is I almost took an entrepreneurial look to them, but I also never had this intention that I wanted to be my own boss or own my own company at some point. And I really think, my business partner was a good friend of mine coming to me one day and saying, hey, you should take a look at this. And if you were interested, I'd come in on it with you and do it together. But yeah, there was definitely a shift in going from, being a part of a company where I was successful and, making a six-figure, compensation with commission bonuses that I was making, and to all of a sudden go to taking a huge risk. But I think I had made really good choices in my life. I didn't have any debt. I didn't my family wasn't really like affluent or successful, but we do live in Vancouver. So, that in itself is maybe like an opposing statement to what I just said, but it wasn't like a crazy thing for me to do. And I think, again, it's because of the supports I had around me, like having my business partner. And again, I really felt like doing it with the franchise for me gave me a lot of tools that I wouldn't have had I did it on my own. And so to me, it wasn't a crazy thing. It was a very brief interaction. It was about 2 months from the discovery process of first learning about them to the day where I quit my job. And maybe that's my personality. I'm very much a driver. And if I could go back, I would do it all over again the exact same way.
That is a wonderful story. I think it's not your typical story, right? I think a lot of people are really nervous when they get ready to do this, but having a lot of success in a very similar industry gave you the confidence that you knew that you could go in and do this successfully long-term on your own. It didn't have to be under somebody else's shingle. But then buying into Express gave you a shingle to put your hat on anyway, right? So you had a good solid brand to go into, and now, but they're still not doing the sales for you. You got to go out and hustle and build that brand inside your local community.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, it took me probably 6 months or a year to get out of my head that I knew what I was doing because of all my previous experience. I was an executive search consultant. We were doing high level, 100, 200,000 plus a year salaries and all the, sales, marketing, finance, operations. Within Express, we started with light industrial, so warehouse construction, labor, trades, moved into office services, now have an accounting and finance division. But as much as we had all these tools and systems, I also had these preconceived notions in my head that I knew what I was doing. And it took me a while, even though we hit those benchmarks early, to really get out of my way. Eventually, I realized there's a lot of things I was doing because I knew better, and really Express knew better. And I wasn't using the systems and tools to the best of their capabilities. And I totally got in my way because of the experience I had and had to get out of it. And really let my team kind of do the things that the system was saying to do, as opposed to me saying, no, I know Express says to do this, but this is actually better. And it wasn't.
And I don't think you're alone there. I think a lot of us make those same kind of mistakes, and not knowing what you don't know it's a hard thing to get through. So I kind of want to throw you under the bus a little bit here and ask you some number questions. I think you'll probably know them, and I've known them for not necessarily for my industry, but for my own experience. When we put out an application today versus 3 years ago, our results are wildly different. Used to be we'd put out something, and about every 10 interviews would be a good one. And, out of every 10 employees that I hired, I got the holy grail, and maybe 3 or 4 really, decent employees is kind of where we were, 3 years ago. But today we put an ad out where we used to get 200 or 300 resumes a week. We're getting 10 to 15 now. And we're, doing 200 or 300 interviews before we find the right candidate. Are you seeing similar numbers to that in the market, or, kind of where do you see how many interviews does a construction company have to do today before they find that perfect employee?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll be getting into this a bit later as well, but I think it really is subjective depending on what you're advertising for. Like one of the greatest things I learned from a speaker I went and saw was that there's 4 key elements to a really successful high-level employee. In fact, he said there's 5. Number 1 was product knowledge. Number 2 was aptitude. Number 3 was skill. Number 4 was motivation. And then number 5 was systems. And he talked about product knowledge and skill being the 2 most expensive things that you can hire for. That if you're looking for an expert in your industry, somebody who's able to hit the ground running, then you're going to have to pay for it. You can make some of the best hires possible by training product knowledge and training people on skill and hiring specifically for aptitude and motivation. And in the franchise system, that's the way. I mean, how does McDonald's give you the same burger everywhere when they're hiring 16, 17, 18-year-old, 20-year-old kids who like don't have experience? It's by having really dialed in systems and processes and hiring people who want to be there. We've got the aptitude to learn and the motivation. And so often when we get involved with a client who says, hey, I want to hire for this position, we have an extensive process that we go through to ask them the questions that we need to better qualify the job, to make sure that we're able to advertise for the right position, knowing our market, that we're going to get a good flow of applicants and that their pay ranges are reasonable based on what their expectations are, and that we're actually going to be able to present them with really qualified candidates. So it's kind of a loaded question, but I mean, for Vancouver, I would say right now, we're the opposite. We post a job, we get like 100 applicants, no problem. The challenge is even for entry-level positions, we get applicants that are applying from all over the world that are looking for assistance getting their visas. Due to COVID, the Canadian government's been restrictive with allowing like new immigrants into the country, and our country heavily relies on foreign workers. And so that's been a huge problem for people. But I think for most of the jobs that we post, we do get a high volume of applicants, but I would agree with you if you said the level of applicant is tough. And I would still say that employers, you talked earlier, I think there's still a lot of control on the employer side, and almost to the detriment of the applicant sometimes and to the employer, because of how many times employers have been burned and what the cost of turnover is to an employer, how much training and investment they put into employees. It really goes both ways. I don't know if there's ever like a perfect way to make it where there's an even balance between employees and employers from that like initial stage of trying to connect with one another. But it's really difficult for both. Of course, employees are looking for, great companies to take jobs with that offer them like growth opportunities and perks and benefits and competitive wages. And employers want the same thing, but employers, I think one of the biggest things, especially for entry employees, is they often feel that they're going to train and hire and onboard somebody, and then that person's going to leave for another company that's going to pay them $1 or $2 more. And so there's this really tough like dynamic between like hiring somebody, how much time you're going to have to invest in them versus what they can expect. And so it like, I don't think there's a perfect question, but I would say for us, we get a high volume of applicants, but it takes a ton of screening work to go through. And I would say that that doesn't always result in 100 qualified people. It's 100 people who are maybe looking for an opportunity or job, and it's up to the company to decide whether they want to hire that person who's got that product knowledge or skill, that full kind of complete package. And I would say, yes, far less likely to get that very quickly than it is to be able to get a good flow of applicants that have that high motivation, high aptitude, who maybe have some transferable skills or come from a transferable industry that you can then bring that person in, lower that barrier for you to be able to hire somebody. But then that requires training and onboarding, coaching, performance management, and puts a lot more emphasis on the employer.
Yeah, I think those soft skills are so important, right? Being able to talk to people, being able to communicate, and being able to learn fast and easy, right? Those are, for me, that's really, really important. Most of the things that I hire for are highly technical. So, and I think where I probably messed it up there is that most of our job hires are entry-level tech positions. And that's
Right.
the more challenging. When we go up and I'm hiring engineers, you're right, I'm having a better success at getting those applicants in, but that is, always a more in-depth process. And you're right, it costs a ton of money to bring in the wrong candidate, right? I know, and I'm going to ask you another bizarre question. Gary Vee says all the time that hiring somebody as a guest and firing them is a decision. You think that's good advice or bad advice?
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, I have for an internal hire with us, I have a very comprehensive process that I go through.
Right.
And I've recently reflected at all the hires we've made. We've hired some phenomenal people within our company. But that doesn't mean that they're always a good long-term fit for us. So I would agree that, like, no matter what, you're still taking a fire. It's still probably a guess as to whether or not they're fit for the company or not, and whether we're going to align long-term or short-term, whatever that looks like, with what the role looks like, their values, all that stuff. And absolutely, letting somebody go, a termination is absolutely a decision, and hopefully one that's based or built on, again, some tangibles in your business where, yeah, you're not just taking a wild card flyer, that you do understand that this person isn't aligned, they're not a fit, they're not a contributor, they're not on the right bus. So yeah, I think that's a good statement.
Right. So, and I come from an engineering design background, so I don't like to guess. And you have these 3 pillars for a successful hire, and I think if you followed those steps, then you would maybe. It's less of a guess and it's more of a strategic decision. Can you go over these 3 pillars with the audience really quick?
Yeah,
Deep dive into all 3 of them if you want.
Yeah, totally. I use these for a couple different things. One, to help a client understand, as again, we're a service provider, so we help a client hire, that if a hire doesn't go right, where do the liabilities fall, to say, like, often the finger gets pointed back at us. You helped us find this person, we hired them, the person didn't work out, so we need you to own that. And we do, of course, we give service to our clients, but it's not always our fault. So the 3 pillars, whether you use a recruitment company or not, are, in my opinion, what you do on the front end. So your recruitment process. So for us, when we get involved with the client, we dig deep, we take an extensive job order with them, whether it's a short-term temp job or a long-term permanent position, to truly understand the company, their culture, their values, their employee value proposition, why someone would want to be there short-term, long-term. From there, we come up with an internal and an external job description. So the internal description would be the key responsibilities, really what you would hold the person accountable to. This could be like over the course of the year, what the expectations would be, which is very different from an external posting. To us, when we post a job, it's a sales pitch. It's an advertisement. It's a marketing campaign. We're not advertising, here's what you're responsible for. We're marketing and advertising why, as a job seeker, you're going to read this job post, why you're going to want to click on it, learn more, why you're going to want to apply. And if after our interview process we feel you're fit, then we'll start digging into the job description itself and sharing those details so we can make sure aligned. Once we've posted and advertised the position, we then go through the inquiry process. And again, a step back. So once we've got the job description in place, then we market and advertise it. Where we do that depends on the type of job, which job board's the best for it. Once we've done that and we start to open the floodgates of applicant flow, then we do what we call like a preliminary inquiry call. And I think for businesses, again, if you're not doing this through a staffing company, that it's very defined. As soon as you open that floodgate, our expectation in our company is if a candidate hasn't been reached out to within 24 hours, it's a service failure on our part. If an amazing candidate applies to a job and they apply to 10 jobs, who's the first person to touch that person? If it's not us, like, we failed to do our job. So again, if you're doing it on your own, you need to define. Often it's the business owner or whoever it is, the manager, who's the one posting and advertising, and it's a side piece to their desk out of reactivity, and they don't touch on these pieces as quickly as they should. We have a really defined inquiry script that we go through, which help us preliminary assess fit for us and the job seeker. Do they want to keep moving forward with us through the process? Is it a fit for them? Commute, basic dollars, skills, experience, the type of job, the company, the industry. If they're a fit from there, we move forward to an interview. These used to be in person. Now they're almost exclusively Zoom for us. Could be 1, 2, or 3 Zoom interviews, depending on the level of position. And then again, depending on the client we're working with, we may do testing. We'll often do reference checks, could be doing background checks. And from there, we'll submit that candidate to that client. And then we help hold their hand through the process. And for them, they kind of do like a hybrid of what we just went through. They do interviews of their own. Ultimately, if they get to the point where they want to offer the job, we often facilitate the offer. One of my beliefs is I typically don't offer a job to someone that I'm not really confident, like 90+% confident they're going to accept the job. So before I put an offer in somebody, I often trial close them, not like some crazy sales technique, but really I talk to them about the full terms of the offer, what the compensation range is going to look like, vacation, benefits, probationary periods, raises, what they can expect, and make sure that they're not using my offer to shop somewhere else, or even yet, I don't want to put an offer in front of somebody that's going to offend them, or I don't want to put something that's totally out of the scope. So there's a lot for me that goes through the start to finish of offering a job to somebody. That is all pillar one. That's stuff we can help as a service provider to people looking to hire. That stuff you can all do on your own. Pillar number 2 would be once you've hired somebody. As a business, once you've hired somebody, that for you is almost where the hard work starts. Training somebody. Do you have a dedicated and dialed in effective training plan? Onboarding, coaching, mentorship, performance management. The first 3 to 6 months are critical for somebody's development. And I really think it's important that a business defines those systems. You can hire an amazing person, but going back to those 4 points, product knowledge, systems, aptitude, motivation. Systems was that 5th piece they talked about. If you don't have the internal systems to properly train and onboard somebody and throw them in the deep end and hope they swim, an amazing top performer could absolutely struggle and end up not working out for your company. So that's kind of the touch on. Again, we give a little bit of coaching and guidance and resource there, but there's only so much we can do. And then the third pillar is for the business and for us, the recruitment company, the tough one, and it's the intangible of the job seeker. And the job seeker obviously has to do what's in their best interest. And, they might be looking for a long-term job, a short-term job. They could be totally open and honest. They could misrepresent things in the interview process. I think most people are really open and honest because they want to get the best fit for them. But again, I've hired great people or had clients hire great people and had unfortunate circumstances, illnesses, deaths in families, needing to move back to different parts or whatever it may be, or just, they thought that it was going to be the right fit and hasn't worked out. And sometimes it's the toughest one where we can do everything the best we possibly can on our end and on the client's end and still have it not worked out. And again, that's why I talk about those 3 pieces, because there's what we can control or what you can control as a business. There's always parts you can't control. And sometimes that's the toughest part when it doesn't work out, even if you've got all those other stuff all those other aspects dialed in.
Wow, that's a lot. So there's a lot of the process that goes into hiring people. And I think for business owners, and if you're thinking about getting into business, I think one thing you have to absolutely understand is that your job is to acquire and maintain. That is clients and employees. And they're equally important. If you don't have the staff to manage your clients, then your clients aren't going to stick around anyway. So it doesn't really matter. You can have the best product in the world, but if you don't have the skill set of onboarding staff and keeping your staff, then you're in a lot of trouble. And it's increasingly more challenging today than it's ever been. People can work from anywhere in the world from their home, right? So the landscape has changed quite a bit, but the benefit there is that you can also get really great talent that doesn't necessarily live in your neighborhood anymore, right? So that's a different world that we're living in today. Thank you for all that advice. And on that second piece, that training, it is wildly important. A tip that I have that we've recently started using is a program called Canvas. It's a really easy tool to use. You can make tests. You can do, really training. And I think you get 100 users for no charge. They don't even start charging you until you have 100 users in there. But it's a great way to say, here's the test, or here's the documentation, and here's the test to take. And that way that the person's reading the documents. I've had plenty of employees say, "Oh, I never read that. I just signed it. You told me to sign it." I didn't have to, and they didn't read the document. So having tests on those documents, I think, is also really, really important.
I think Brent, one thing I can share, if you don't mind, just interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I know something for our business, like even for our internal hires, we tried to, take our operating costs into consideration and really make sure that we're being as, fiscally responsible as we could be. And I feel as a small business, and my advice to other small businesses would be to overhire. Turnover has been one of the hardest things for us to deal with internally as a small business, where we're trying to grow. We grow these divisions. We put people in them who are fantastic, who have success, who help us grow. And then for whatever reason, they move on and move to another opportunity. We don't have the depth to be able to manage that turnover as well as we could have. And I've realized that was a huge failure on my part by not having like the depth. I'd rather somebody over budget and over hire and be able to manage anything that comes through than be, trying to really manage and break even as early as we did. It might have been better for us to break even later, but have more people who can handle the customers and handle the volume and be overstaffed than understaffed. I really think being like lean has hurt us way more.
Right. It can. And I tell people, and this is a weird thing with culture too, right? Once your employees think that you're fully staffed, that means that your org chart is full, and they start seeing ads out on other places. One, why are they looking for a job? That's a problem you might have. But two, it can damage the culture. So I think it's important that if you're always looking for employees, which I'm always looking for employees, is let your staff know, hey guys, we're always looking for staff. I don't necessarily know where I might put them, but if we find a great candidate, we're going to bring them on the team, right? And we're going to put them in a position. But that lets you be in a position, if you're always hiring, of it sucks when you have to hire somebody because you've got an empty seat in your org chart and you're not servicing your customers properly because of that. So having that redundancy there so that people can move in, cross-training and redundancies in staff are wildly important. If so, not only just for gap filling, but for governance in jobs, right? So you can make sure that you at least have enough people to double check the other person's work, because we're all human. We make mistakes. It's going to happen, right? No matter what. So thank you for that advice. I think that's very, very important too. Now, we've got a lot of changes in the world that we've just gone through. The pandemic has, in my mind, hasn't changed that much for technology, but it definitely pushed technology to people that weren't using video conferencing and things like that weren't using it before. Now it's massively adopted, right, across the globe. But that doesn't necessarily mean what's going to happen in the future for technology. I think we're going to see a lot of new changes coming up. How do you think technology is going to change your industry in the future?
Yeah, I mean, for us, technology's definitely changed the way we interview people. One of the kind of changes we made early on through, I guess, the start of the pandemic was really understanding the candidate experience. For us was one of the most important things. So, we had people filling out online applications and doing all these things and kind of giving the candidate homework almost to assess whether or not they're going to be good or not. And again, I'd say more because of what you said before about how hard it is to find good people. We've really changed how we do that. And then, expecting people to come into our office and go through an interview. I just had this moment the other day after signing onto a Zoom interview and signing off on it at the end, that it has completely eliminated that uncomfortable feeling for a poor job seeker who has to show up at their interview, 10, 15 minutes early, either wait outside for that 5 or 10 minutes if they're really early, then come in at whatever time they feel is appropriate, sit in the waiting room and make small talk, get in the interview. And then when the interview's over, you got to kind of make small talk and have an awkward handshake on the way out. You've talked about how you're going to shake someone's hand and hope your hand isn't, sweaty and stuff like that. Like, the Zoom interview has changed things so significantly for both parties, where now it's just, hey, great, good, all right, click. And we end on such like a great note. It starts on hopefully a great note. I think that's a big one. I think it's really just going to be trying to make the process as easy as possible. I know in the recruitment industry, technology has been a thing where they're starting to use AI to reject or move forward a candidate based on keywords on their resumes. That's something that, may get adopted through the industry in the future. But for me personally, I think we rely less on resumes and rely more on actual conversations with people to see if they're a fit. I know there's another kind of trend in the industry that we started to see where the actual like human interaction with the interview is being taken out, and they're using technology to be able to, and it started right now with warehouses and construction where you can just download an app and order a laborer to your job site. And the problem with that is, again, that process we talked about, even if it's for a one-day job, of going through and truly understanding what the need is, and then being able to assign the right person the job through an interview. I don't know how you can necessarily circumvent that whole process, but there are definitely companies that are looking to try to do that. So I think like the big one is just that Zoom technology for us right now, making that candidate experience even easier. I think that again, talking about that kind of being able to order, I think there's definitely a desire for people to make it easier for both the job or the business and the job seeker to try to connect them easier. But I don't know, again, whether it's with a recruitment company or not, I don't know if you can ever alleviate that need for that HR person to be involved, to have that actual conversation with them, and be that pivotal part of the process, because fit and culture is such an important piece.
Absolutely. The gig economy is changing the world as we know it. And it's a fantastic situation for highly objective work, right? If you're driving a car, if you have a license, we know you know how to do that. I suppose, though, if you know how to read a blueprint and drive a nail, that could work for construction workers as well, if there had some vetting inside of that application as well. I'd be less likely to do it.
The other interesting one, real quick to interrupt, just so I don't forget, is LinkedIn. I really feel LinkedIn is highly utilized. It's a fantastic platform, but it's not like universally adopted. And as much as it pains me to say, I really feel like a LinkedIn profile is an exceptional, far better version of what used to be a resume. Obviously, we still get resumes, but I post tons of jobs through LinkedIn. Anytime a job seeker applies through LinkedIn, you get an automatic snapshot of their profile plus the resume they attach. Right. And I don't even know eventually why we would even need the resume anymore if we can have what would be the best way, but like a publicly recognized and verified, it'd almost be like if you could post your job saying you work for me, and you can get that Twitter verified check mark next to it. If I own the company and I go, yes, these dates do match up. If there was an ability for me to control that, or some way, of course, with some fairness, because you don't want an employer having all the control over the employer and what their profile can say or not say. But I really think a positive shift would be that really robust LinkedIn profile, or something similar, where we're getting a better overall comprehensive snapshot of the person. You've got their summary, you've got their image, it gives the person the ability to control their banner. And I think really with resumes in general, or with your LinkedIn, effort is able to be seen through what somebody submits. When I get a black and white resume that's just all words and, could be crunched into one paragraph and they've got a bunch of stuff, versus a good, 1 or 2 page resume that somebody's, either paid or downloaded a template that's maybe got a little bit of color or a little bit of a different layout, you can see the type of person who just goes, okay, I'm going to do, the minimum that I feel I need to do, versus someone who really goes above and beyond. And you can see that with a LinkedIn profile too, how much they're putting in their summary, how much detail they're putting in each of the previous jobs they have. And I think that's a potentially great continuance and hopefully shift in terms of using that technology to help the business and the job seeker better connect and understand who would or wouldn't be a really good fit for a job or a company.
Your LinkedIn profile is important, and I see so many people that just kind of neglect it. And if you want to strive in a business world, I don't know how you can get away without having a good LinkedIn profile. And I do want to ask one more question before we go today. You have a lot of experience interviewing people on Zoom calls. Is there something that people are doing repeatedly on Zoom that's a no-no when they go into interviews?
I think for me, it's a lack. It's not whether it's a Zoom or in person. It's just a general lack of preparedness sometimes. I have people who, again, I can use more of us as an example. We have a pretty comprehensive process. We have our internal descriptions that we'll send to people. And one of my first questions in our second interview will be tell me about our internal job description. Tell me what stood out to you. There are some very industry specific terminology in there that they would have no idea what it means. And if someone doesn't take the time to either review our website, I've had people who have responded oh yeah, it looks like a pretty standard description. I looked at it from a high level. It seems pretty standard. And my immediate question is what does looking at it from a high level mean? It's a 1-page document. Did you read it or did you not read it? Do you have questions or do you not have questions? Have you taken a look at our website or have you not? I really think like if you're serious, you're actually looking at this as a long-term fit for yourself, then it should be really important for you that this job is a fit. It shouldn't just be one way where it's all about me and not about you. And I think that's probably the biggest thing I can see is just how much time, effort, and energy are you putting into your job search to make sure that you find the right job for you. And again, some people only want short-term temporary work, then great. Like that should be really open and honest in their process. But again, a lot of these concerns or challenges based on the question you asked are in interviews for long-term permanent positions where there's been a true demonstration of behavior of not putting the time, effort, and energy in. I've even had one person, I'll never forget the interview, where she straight up said, I haven't had the time, I was really busy, and she didn't lie about it. And we said, great, let's book another one. But I've had people who, instead of just saying, I didn't look at it, I haven't had the time, or it wasn't important to me. Well, if it wasn't important to you, this isn't going to be a fit. But if it was important to you and you just didn't have the time, then great, let's stop right now. How much time do you need? Let's book in a day, 2 days, 3 days later. But I really think it's more, are they showing that the job is just as important to them as it is to the person who's trying to hire a great person?
Absolutely. And I would add to that, if you are doing interviews on Zoom, a Zoom interview is still an interview, right? Don't come on the Zoom call eating your noodles in your pajamas, right? It's bad. It's still an interview. You got to take it as seriously as if you're going to get dressed and go on site and have that interview. Brent, thank you for your time today. I had a blast. Is there anything you'd like to leave the audience with before we leave?
With Express here in Vancouver, our goal is to try to help as many job seekers as we can find jobs and help as many clients as we can help them find good people. We release some content through our LinkedIn page and through our Facebook that is like no cost value add without any intention of trying to have you hire through us or take a job through us. If you're in Vancouver, of course, we'd love to talk to you. But if you're not in Vancouver, our website or our LinkedIn or Facebook all have some phenomenal resources. I post videos once every week or 2 weeks about different parts of the process that we've discussed, that, how you can interview better, how you can help tweak your resume, what you should look at, or if you're hiring, how you can, change the process. There's a ton of stuff there that, I just want to provide to people and help them navigate that process better. Again, if you're in our area or not, and you want to reach out, you've got questions or help, I'm happy to help anybody. And of course, if you're based here and you're having a hard time hiring, love to hear from you. We'd be happy to see if we can be a resource and help you hire some great people here in Vancouver.
What's the website address?
It's long. It's like Express Employment Professionals, Vancouver. The main page would be Express Employment Professionals, and then we've got a unique site based on our Vancouver franchise.
But if they go there, they can search for Vancouver and find your
and if you're able to link it, we'll get you links for all that so you can share it.
Fantastic. We'll throw all the links and contact information in the bio for this episode. Brent, thank you so much for your time today. I hope to talk to you again soon. That's it for today's show, folks. Again, if you'd like to join my text line community, all you have to do is text me any question about business or technology, and I'll send you an absolutely unbiased answer. The number is 314-370-2871. Get to work.